The Hollywood Sickness, Abercrombie and Fitch. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. A little while ago, I made a video about the Hollywood sickness, and if you haven't watched that, I really recommend that you do so, because it's so important in helping you understand so much of why the world is as it is. In essence, the Hollywood sickness is what is caused as a consequence of a particular area attracting narcissists because it caters to the prime aims so effectively. The particular genre, profession, sector enables the narcissist to control many people and very effectively. It allows the drawing of fuel from many appliances, massive amounts of fuel, which is the lifeblood of the narcissist. It gives access to so many people so that various character traits can be acquired. And furthermore, it also enables the narcissist to have a host of residual benefits. Facade management, access to information, access to secrets, access to networks, and of course, money. There are lots of these environments: politics, entertainment, sport. But I call it the Hollywood sickness because it is most prevalent in Hollywood and manifests in a range of behaviors as we've seen in the relation to Harvey Weinstein, the Me Too movement, Jeffrey Epstein, and now P. Diddy. But this sickness isn't just the preserve of Hollywood. It spreads further afield. It can be found in politics. It can be found in sport. It can be found in business. And a report provided by Rihanna Croxford and Madeline Hulpert demonstrate that the Hollywood sickness has permeated business also, with news that the former CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch and his partner have been arrested and charged with running a prostitution and international sex trafficking business. As always, it behooves me to point out that there's been no trial of the evidence, no conviction, but the information that this BBC report provides is damning evidence of the existence of the Hollywood sickness and the prevalence of narcissists. Authorities arrested former fashion executive Mike Jeffries, his partner Matthew Smith, and the couple's alleged middleman, James Jacobson, on Tuesday morning. Federal prosecutors said the men used force, fraud, and coercion, all methods of the assertion of control, to engage in violent and exploitative sexual acts. If those allegations are correct, that demonstrates individuals that operate with an absence of emotional empathy, that have a desire to assert control over people, that show an absence of accountability for their behaviours, that they are manipulative and haughty. Mr. Jeffries and his partner have previously denial, the first line of the twin lines of the narcissistic defence, any wrongdoing via their lawyers. And Mr. Jeffries' lawyer told the BBC on Tuesday that they would respond in detail to the allegations after the indictment is unsealed. Accordingly, their position is that they haven't done anything wrong. A lawyer for Mr. Smith has been approached for comment. Abercrombie and Fitch declined to comment on the latest developments. The FBI opened an investigation last year after the BBC revealed claims that Mike Jeffries and his partner sexually exploited and abused men at events they hosted in their New York residences and hotels around the world. Again, if this has been made out, sexual exploitation allows a narcissist to control an individual, draw fuel from them by way of their reactions, often negative fuel because they're being forced into the act rather than doing so willingly, and of course provides a residual benefit in terms of pleasure. The BBC investigation found that there was a sophisticated operation involving a middleman and a network of recruiters tasked with finding men for these events. There are similarities in the behaviour of Jeffrey Epstein, who had a middle person, or a lieutenant, in Ghislaine Maxwell, and that she was tasked with recruiting young girls to then find themselves abused by Epstein. On Tuesday, U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, Breon Peace, alleged that Mr. Jeffries used his wealth, power, and status as CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch to traffic men for his own sexual pleasure and for the pleasure of his partner, Mr. Smith. Outlining prosecutors' accusations, Mr. Peace alleged the couple employed Mr. Jacobson as their recruiter. He would be involved as a lieutenant, who would conduct tryouts with men from across the globe by engaging them in sex acts in exchange for money. Once Mr. Jeffries approved of the men, they would be flown to his New York home, where they were pressured to consume alcohol, Viagra, and muscle relaxants, Mr. Peace claimed. Thus, those people are being subjected to behaviour which exhibits an absence of emotional empathy. They are objectified. They're being pressured to consume things that they didn't want to consume. They're there as objects to be used for the sexual gratification of certain individuals. Prosecutors further alleged that Mr. Jeffries and Mr. Smith directed others or personally injected men with an erection-inducing substance when they were incapable or unwilling to participate. Accordingly, where a man would not be aroused, it was the case that they required that, and therefore there would be a lack of boundary recognition, as alleged, whereby an injection would be given. The ex-CEO spent millions of dollars on a massive infrastructure to support this operation and maintain its secrecy. Use of wealth, which is a residual benefit, to then assert control over these individuals, but also to nullify potential threats to control by maintaining its secrecy. This included international travel, hotel stays, paid staff, and security for the events. Prosecutors said there were 15 victims mentioned in the indictment, but alleged that the operation encompassed dozens and dozens of men. After a court appearance on Tuesday, Mr. Jeffries was released on a $10 million bond, while Mr. Jacobson was released on a $500,000 bond. They are next due in court this Friday. Mr. Smith was ordered detained. Mr. Peace, the federal prosecutor, confirmed at a press conference on Tuesday that authorities were initially tipped off by media reports. Following the BBC's reporting, a civil lawsuit was also filed in New York, accusing Mr. Jeffries and Mr. Smith of sex trafficking, rape and sexual assault, similar to the allegations that have been made against P. Diddy. The lawsuit also accused Abercrombie and Fitch of having funded a sex trafficking operation led by its former CEO over the 2 decades he was in charge. If that's correct, it demonstrates his sense of entitlement to use a corporate entity as his own personal vehicle for the achievement of asserting control, drawing fuel, and gaining those residual benefits. Earlier on Tuesday, Brad Edwards of Edwards Henderson, a civil lawyer representing some of the alleged victims, said, "These arrests are a huge first step towards obtaining justice for the many victims who were exploited and abused through this sex trafficking scheme that operated for many years under the legitimate cover Abercrombie provided. Use of a facade." The unprecedented reporting of the BBC, coupled with the lawsuit our firm filed detailing the operation, are to credit for these monumental arrests. This was the result of impressive investigative journalism. In its initial investigation, the BBC spoke to 12 men who described attending or organising events involving sex acts run for Mr. Jeffries, 80, and his British partner Mr. Smith, 61, between 2009 and 2015. The 8 men who attended the events said they were recruited by a middleman who the BBC identified as James Jacobson, Lieutenant. Then more men came forward last month. Some alleged Mr. Jeffries' assistants had injected them in the penis with what they were told was liquid Viagra. Mr. Jacobson, 71, previously told the BBC in a statement through his lawyer that he took offence at the suggestion of any coercive, deceptive or forceful behaviour on my part, and had no knowledge of any such conduct by others. The BBC also interviewed dozens of other sources, including former household staff. Some of the men the BBC spoke to said they were misled about the nature of the events or not told sex was involved. Others said they understood the events would be sexual, but not exactly what was expected of them. All were paid. Several told the BBC the middleman or other recruiters raised the possibility of modelling opportunities with A&F. Similar also to the way that P. Diddy utilised the prospect of people gaining fame in the music industry as an inducement to control people. David Bradbury, then 23 and an aspiring model, said that it was made clear to him that without performing oral sex on Mr. Jacobson, he would not be meeting A&F CEO Mr. Jeffries' promised gain. It was like he was selling fame, and the price was compliance. Assertion of control, Mr. Bradbury told the BBC. Mr. Bradbury said he later attended a party at Mr. Jeffries' mansion in the Hamptons in Long Island, where he met Mr. Jeffries and had sex with him. He said the secluded location and presence of Mr. Jeffries' personal staff, dressed in Abercrombie and Fitch uniforms, supervising events meant he didn't feel safe to say no, or I don't feel comfortable with this. After the BBC's initial investigation was published last year, Abercrombie and Fitch announced it was opening an independent investigation into the allegations raised. When the BBC recently asked when this report would be completed and if the findings would be made public, the company declined to answer. Like Mr. Jeffries and Mr. Smith, the brand has been trying to get the civil lawsuit against it dismissed, arguing it had no knowledge of the supposed sex trafficking venture led by its former CEO, which it has been accused of having funded. Earlier this year, a US court ruled that Abercrombie & Fitch must cover the cost of Mike Jeffries' legal defence as he continues to fight the civil allegations of sex trafficking and rape. The judge ruled the allegations were tied to his corporate role after he sued the brand for refusing to pay his legal fees. Sense of entitlement. The brand said it did not comment on legal matters. However, in its defence submitted to court, Abercrombie & Fitch said its current leadership team was previously unaware of the allegations until the BBC contacted it, adding the company abhors sexual abuse and condemns the alleged conduct. Mr. Jeffries stepped down as CEO in 2014 following declining sales and left with a retirement package valued at about $25 million, according to company filings at the time. Once one of America's highest-paid CEOs, he was a controversial figure who faced claims of discrimination against staff, concerns about his lavish expenses, and complaints about the unofficial influence of his life partner Matthew Smith inside Abercrombie and Fitch. I'll be looking at more in respect of these allegations and the behaviour of Mr. Jeffries, but it would appear from the claims that are being made and the evidence of the victims that this is another instance of a narcissist with the Hollywood sickness permeating, this time, business, but behaving in ways that you've heard of so many times before. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.